If you like this podcast clip, you can watch the entire episode on this channel or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Or you can check it out live on Fridays, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This question is a good question. Basically, what they're asking is the difference between the made in Mexico Fender guitars and the made in USA Fender guitars. But overall, just the difference in expensive and inexpensive guitars made in factories. And the way the factories explain it is the best way I've heard it ever, which is the more expensive guitars have more hands on them. Think about it this way, and this is such a pragmatic way to look at this. Let's say a guitar takes 16 hours to manufacture, right? I'm just throwing out a generic number, but I just want a generic number. What if I told you an expensive guitar has 9 hours of hand time, a person working on it, and 7 hours of machine time, in other words, CNCs and what have you. And an inexpensive guitar is the opposite of that, or maybe even has 10 hours machine time and only 6 hours hand time. That's basically what I've learned going to the factories. The hand time costs the most, and because it's slower, it varies in quality, because it's human. And so more expensive guitars tend to have more hand time on them. That's the best, most generic way to think of that. So obviously the first thing that's going to differentiate a made in USA guitar from a made in Mexico guitar is that one factor. Same thing with the custom shop guitars and so on, right? It's more personal time with the instrument, whether time spent with the setup part of it or what have you. So I don't really think so. You know, there are some more basic things, like obviously sometimes the blocks in the bridge are different. You know, one's more of a cast block of, you know, just generic metal, and the other one's like a brass block on some guitars. There are things like that, but overall, quality materials are not hugely different in the two guitars. They are just minorly different. Brian says, not always though. My Fano was made by one luthier start to finish. I don't know. I've never been to Fano. They invited me in the shop, and then they didn't invite. It's like they invited me, but then they didn't follow through. So I don't know. I've never been in their shop. So I don't know if they're all hand time on their guitars. I don't know if they CNC out the parts or whatever. You know, if they CNC the bodies and then assemble them, or how they do it. I don't know anything about it. I'd be really shocked if they are using a pin router, but they could be, right? But even then, that's not hand time. That's still a machine. It's just a hand guiding the machine, but it's not like a controlled CNC machine. So, you know, I don't find that to be better. That's just so we're all on the same page. There's no argument I have that the more hand time on building the guitar is better. I think a machine should build the guitar, and then use the skilled labor of hand workmanship to basically fine tune it, you know, sand certain parts, polish certain parts, you know, basically do the detail work and get that out. But the core of the guitar can be done faster. Here's why I say that. There's a couple benefits that's really important to acknowledge when you talk about the CNC machine and building guitars. Yes, it's not just because it does it exact every time. That's a benefit. The other benefit is that obviously there's less people getting hurt, right? The machines are doing the work. You're not worrying about somebody losing a finger or hurting themselves. Less workman comp issues, less cost. Also, because the machine can run consistently all the time, it can basically cut down the cost because it's more efficient, making more bodies and necks. But the last thing, the thing that adds to the quality more than anything else, is when there is a defect in a guitar in a mass-produced shop like Fender, I have watched them just discard it. I hear it all the time that people say like, oh, the relic Fender guitars are just the one they messed up. That's absolutely not true. They do not do that at all. I wish they would. It seems to make more sense. It makes more sense that if you had a Fender guitar Strat body and it got it chipped by the router, that you would literally just turn that into a relic guitar. That's not what they do. They throw them in a bin. I actually have pictures that I was told not to disclose with people when I was in the Fender factory, where pictures of Wolfgang bodies and Fender bodies that were being thrown in these bins that will then at the end of the day be thrown in the trash. And one of them, like, we were like trying to get them to give us this Wolfgang body because it was like, it looked perfect to us. There was just one minor flaw. My point to that is that in the heavy, more mass-produced concept, one thing I noticed is that when there's a problem, they discard it and they start fresh because it's cheaper to make another one than discard it. Now, that goes against one of my principles, which is I don't like things thrown away. I like to fix things. So I wish there was a way to kind of have that both the ability to obviously make sure that those defective things don't get to the public, but also not throw them away. What I can tell you is that when you look at not only a smaller shop, but a shop that's more hands-on, they spend more time fixing a problem. I see it all the time. There's guitars that you get that are expensive that if you were to count the hours of time on the guitar, a lot of those hours are in the fixing of a flaw because they got to get it out, because it's cheaper and faster to fix an issue than it is to start from scratch, because obviously that human time is so expensive and valuable. So there's just takes on it. And again, I try not to end with this is the better way and this is the worst way or whatever. It's more of just my observations of the ways. But that's what I'm saying is, like, it's funny. I don't know how I deeply feel if one's better than the other, but I can tell you, it seems like it always feels like the opposite. In other words, you kind of feel like the high-end guitars are more perfect, and I find they have more flaws, but they've been hidden by somebody reworking it. Where some of the mass-produced ones, you tend to get more of a perfect guitar because of the fact that they can just start again. Ring Zane something says, still better than running a bulldozer over them. Yep, still one of the worst things I've still seen in my entire life of guitar stuff, was watching the bulldozer run over those Gibson guitars. To not only run over all those guitars with a bulldozer, but still to this day, film it. I loved it when I saw there was a bunch of YouTube channels that were trying to defend the idea logically by saying, this is typical of all companies. And I'm like, yeah, here's the problem though. We get it. Samsung runs over all the old phones. Amazon's throwing away pallets and pallets of good product in the trash. That's horrible, equally so. But watching a video of it is way worse. Because it's so, like I said, it's so emotional, watching that video and the audio. It's the hearing the crunching of those guitars. It was like watching a horror movie. It was so bad. So there you go. If you like this podcast clip, you can watch the entire episode on this channel or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Or you can check it out live on Fridays, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.